Hello, everyone, and welcome to another riveting, put my teeth in, episode of Full Throttle on Unprecedented TV, where we dive head on into the challenges facing British drivers and much more. I'll tell you what, Charlotte, I'm going to do that from the start. So edit it out from right. Start that bit again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another riveting episode of Full Throttle here on Unprecedented TV, where we dive head on into the challenges facing British drivers and much more besides. I'm Paul Naylor, Communications Director for the Alliance of British Drivers, and today we're talking with independent researcher, climate realist and net zero skeptic, Ben Pyle.
Hi, I'm Brian Gregory, Policy Director of the Alliance of British Drivers. Ben has been documenting the inexorable slow slide towards insanity of the "we're all doomed" Corporal Fraser climate crisis hysterics, as all their cherished belief systems collapse under the weight of their own scientific and logical inconsistencies. So buckle up, this is Full Throttle.
Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Hello. Can you tell us a bit about your background, please, and how you became embroiled in exposing the man-made CO2-driven runaway climate change myth and the, to say the least, often questionable actors propagating and perpetuating it?
Well, my journey was one. I've compared myself in the past, not as in I have said in the past, I was a proto-Greta. When I was 12, I was very taken with this stuff, this green stuff. Yeah. And I came from a very green lefty milieu, such as it was in the 1980s. Yeah. Like quite a mess in Oxford. And, right. Lots of those kind of strands, there's a lot of left and green ideas wafting around, not very coherent. But I absorbed them, and I think I bored my classmates when I was about 12 with a lecture on some kind of environmental feedback mechanisms and why you shouldn't chop down the lovely forests. I didn't have a clue about it. So I grew. I was through my teens. I was attached to that stuff, and into my 20s. But then. I think we were talking about, you mentioned earlier, Bjorn Lomborg, backstage, in about 2001, he came to Oxford to do a talk, a book, about his book about the skeptical environmentalist. Yes. And there was a local activist who was known to me. I knew quite a few of these activists. There's a local activist who's quite a big deal now, called Mark Linus. He's still sort of in this sort of grey area between environmental activism and so-called academia. You can't see my air quotes. I need to do that. And because it's just flim flam. But I'll come to that. But he custard pied Bjorn Lomborg and said, "This is for everything you say which is bullshit about the environment." So I thought, well, I mean, this is a seat of learning, and Brian, you know that.
That was where I read my first degree at St. Catherine's.
Yeah, and it used to be a place. Well, it might have
absolutely. That was when it was a place that taught people how to think rather than what to think.
Sure. Yeah. And the Greens had lobbied the university to have Bjorn Lomborg prohibited from any university territory. I don't know how successful that was, but I thought this is not what happens. This is not collegiate, shall we say? This is not academia. This is not science. This is not This is not anything that is owed to the Enlightenment. This is a really deeply regressive thing, and it quite quickly turned my whole view upside down. And I bought Bjorn's book and I read it, and I thought, well, that's an interesting journey, because then his journey, you probably know, started out as an attempt to debunk the work of Julian Simon, this economist. I won't go too much into Simon's work here, but he sort of pointed out that as we develop technologically and economically, the resources from which we draw from grow. So resources are resources. I mean, it sounds like when you try and explain this to people, sometimes, I mean, they're just so cynical. They miss the point, because it sounds so sort of what's the word for it? Almost philosophical waffle, you know. But actually, resource is a relationship between human ingenuity and the material world. It's not just that you've got a stack of stuff that could be energy and that's a resource. No, if you can use it, it's a resource. And this has all sorts of wonderful implications for our economy and our ways of life, which I think are worth exploring. But anyway, Bjorn Lomborg set his students, I think his postgraduate students, the task of debunking Julian Simon, and they discovered that they couldn't. They discovered that they agreed with him.
And it's interesting. You've had not just Lomborg, but Michael Schellenberger, Patrick Moore started off from. And Patrick Moore was actually one of the founder members of Greenpeace, but he is now absolutely very much on the message that cheap, plentiful energy is what we need. Carbon dioxide is our friend, not our enemy. And the last thing we should be doing is trying to control atmospheric carbon dioxide, because the costs are prohibitively stupid and the advantages are nil.
Yeah, that's right. And that was one of my other motivating things, is that and Bjorn's been incredibly good at this.
Yes.
And I don't understand why it hasn't had more purchase, especially from this sort of green left milieu that thinks it's anti-racist. Is that if you take the amount of good you can do per dollar investing in clean energy versus the amount of good you can do by building roads, industrializing, and so on and so forth. They're just epochs apart. It's like it's inconceivable to me that anyone with any basic grasp of arithmetic wouldn't subject the green agenda to that test first. And I put it back to the green left people. Well, who are you calling racist in any of your discussions? Because there's nothing more racist than environmentalism.
Yes.
Right. Because it says all of the places that haven't yet reached our level of technological and economic development may not do so. And it uses the power of Western political institutions and financial institutions to prohibit the development of hundreds of millions of people. And that's I think in the end, in the final analysis, that's going to if you do a crude body bag count, that's going to be worse than any of the world wars. That's going to be worse than communism.
And
right?
I mean,
even through the 20th century, like you count all of those people who didn't have those lives that they deserved. That's an awful thing. And so that's why that's kind of been my angle since then. Is, well, let's take apart this ideology. Let's understand environmentalism as an ism, the same as any other isms that characterized the first part of the 20th century. And then we can understand what we're really dealing with and how those other isms got themselves into science to distort and colonize science, like the classically Lysenkoism, but all of the sort of the Nazi eugenics stuff and so on, these deviations from proper science. And then we might have a chance of actually having rational environmental policy, because none of us here think that pollution is in and of itself a good thing.
Absolutely not. We should reduce it to the minimum, but we should do what we can do most efficiently to improve the state of the world. And let's be realistic here. In the last 150 years, living standards have improved dramatically for the vast majority of people in the developed world. Their life expectancies have more than doubled. What's not to like? We've got more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's greening the Earth. NASA photography shows us that. It's greening the Earth. We're getting more fertile land, better plant yields. We can feed ourselves if we can distribute the food properly and use the energy efficiently to distribute it. So, where's the threat? Where's the climate crisis? We might have warmed a degree or so, but we started from probably the lowest temperature in the last 10,000 years when we started our measurements. And there's a brilliant video, We Live in Cold Times, by Jorgen Petter Steffensen, I think it is, where he describes how they get the ice cores and how they reconstruct the temperature record, and basically says, well, if you want to do a serious experiment on, and understand what's happening, we started absolutely the worst place, because the temperatures are always going to go up from where they were, and you can't extract which is what's man-made and what's not. And there are so many factors that IPCC doesn't even look at, like cloud cover, cosmic rays, ocean currents. They don't factor into their equations, and their climate models, as a result, go up like that.
Yeah,
and the temperatures are going less. And there's a brilliant graph by John Christie, which you've probably seen. He's from the University of Alabama, Huntsville in Alabama, and he shows all the climate models, and then he shows the average of all the climate models, which shows the temperature going up like that, and then he shows the one correct model, which is the Russian one by, I think it's Habibullah Abdussamad.
Oh, we lost Brian.
And you're on mute, Paul. I'll just give him a quick call.
Okay, right. While you're doing that, I'm just next door. We're having an extension built, so I'm just going to have to go and shut a door because it's going to get a bit noisy. Just 1 second. Bloody orangery.
They're building an orangery. Orangery.
Yeah. Well, we've already got one, and I think they like the look of it, so I think they've decided to copy. But there you go.
Flattery.
Yeah.
Imitation.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was already here when we bought this place, but
I like the idea of an orangery. I don't think I've got the square footage though.
It's just a bit more useful than a conservatory.
Behind this screen, a multitude of sins. This is a hovel essentially, and I bought it a year ago, and I've been slowly doing. I don't really have a kitchen. I don't really have a bathroom. I've had to make a sort of shower out of wood and plastic sheeting.
It sounds a bit like my previous house.
What we call a temple hitch.
Hello, you're on the opposite side now, though. You need to.
Yeah. Well, we've moved you.
You've gone to the left.
We knew it'd happen eventually.
Anyway, sorry, we were Charlotte, where do you want us to pick up? Ben had just explained his.
Yeah, go from where you were, and I'll edit it out. It's fine.
Well, we were talking about climate models, and the problem is the climate models are what's driving the policy, not the actual temperature measurements. So all the policy.
I mean, I would take issue with that to an extent. I think it's not that simple. But I think you raise a good point, because you start in the 19th century, and all of these models, what they have done is a number on the generations that followed, Generation X maybe or something. The kids who think they have no future, and it's a real pity that when at the peak of that mini ice age into the 1850s or whatever, whenever, at the end of the 19th century, in continental Europe, in countries as advanced as Germany, infant mortality was heading towards 50%. And yet it is now that children think they have no future, when infant mortality is much closer to 0.5%. It's a tiny fraction. It's mostly a rounding error if we try and turn it into sort of those kind of percentages. It's a radically different world. from that cold, whether that's because of the temperature, whether that's because of wealth. It is completely different, and we're not vulnerable to the elements. I mean, even in the 1950s in Britain, people were far more exposed to environmental risks. But anyway, what I'm getting at with the models, I think aren't the driver. I think green ideology is the basis for models. So if you go back even to the 1960s and the beginnings of the green agenda in total, not just the climate agenda, models were being used to in attempt to sort of understand society's interactions with the natural world. But I think they just presupposed green ideology. So and that is that we live in a sensitive niche, the same as any other biological organism, or in theory, they're the same as any other biological organism, which once removed, that population is doomed. Whereas in reality, as Julian Simon pointed out, we create our own niche, we create our own circumstances, and now we live in a range of circumstances from like -40 to +40. Human civilization can flourish. So that would seem to me to just scupper ab initio any real science that claimed to be able to understand the interactions between the human and natural world. I think it's sort of like any science that claims that as its basis is pretty much on hiding to nothing. It's ideological foundation, but the idea of nature being the provider of wealth rather than human ingenuity being the spark of wealth is extremely powerful. Because it's poetic, it resenates with us, our emotions.
Gaia principle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
I think models have gone in search of, in that sort of like in the way sort of esoteric mathematicians sort of went to look for God in pi or something. They tried to give substance to Gaia in these models. They try to say, and there's a very interesting, in fact, it was Mark Linus again, when he stopped throwing custard pies at people, he wrote a book called The God Species, which attempted to sort of reformulate environmentalism into something more rational. And he said that there's a sort of a principle which must be true about Earth as a self-organizing system, a bit like James Lovelock's hypothesis. But actually, it might be just as much the case that it's not. You could say that the endurance of life on Earth is just as much evidence that there is no such self-regulation, that it's actually individual organisms which are capable of surviving despite their circumstances. And he hadn't really properly accounted for that. And I think that's the way ideology leans in on science and impresses on science what's kind of expected from it. But what are its marching orders given by its funders, by its political masters?
And I think that's very much become the problem, that it's where's the money coming from and what's their ulterior motive? Because it seems to me now it's very much a command and control. It seems to me, that people talk politically about far left and far right, but for me, they've coalesced because for the inhabitants of Nazi Germany or Marxist or Stalinist Russia, there was no difference. It was just two identical ideologies, but arguing about who's got the right to put the label on the bucket.
Yeah, who cares whether the boot standing on your neck is attached to the left or the right leg?
Exactly.
It's all the same.
Very well put.
I mean, the Overton window where they were talking about left and right is not. It's libertarian, totalitarian, and it goes that way. Yeah. And the ones who want to impose all this stuff are off at the totalitarian end, and us libertarians are stuck at the other side thinking, what's motivating these crazies? Other than megalomania, of course.
It's very difficult to communicate that to people today because these comparisons of 20th century ideologies are so stark. Because it is true, Stalinist purges involved pulling people out of their beds and shooting them in an alley, and liquidating the kulaks, or starving an entire population. But the reason it's not done now is not because those people are any less psychopathic. It's that you can just cancel someone at the push of a button now.
Yeah.
You can debank someone just
Yeah.
like that, and go, and people will go, hooray!
Yeah.
When Nigel Farage was debanked, and grateful to him for exposing the realities of what we might call ESG and so on, is that this, like, what I mean, I wondered what they really thought that was going to happen, and it turns out now that I never know really how much we can trust about any kind of images that come out of China, whether they're counter-establishment or authored by the CCP in its own propaganda. But it looks like people who have low credit scores end up on the streets.
Yeah.
And we weren't that far away. I mean, if you take someone who's quite wealthy, Nigel Farage's bank account away from him, ultimately he can't pay the rent, he can't pay the council tax, he can't pay the food bill, can't pay the electricity bill. What do they expect people are going to do? It's a very nasty.
Yeah, it's dystopian, and I don't understand why the majority of people can't understand that, because today it's him, tomorrow it'll be you. You don't seem to understand that because he's in the firing line. Ultimately, they'll also be in the firing line, because certainly the latest, this guy who's allied with Blair on ID cards, the American billionaire. There's a talk he did, I think, at the World Economic Forum. It's really scary, basically saying, we will have total control. You'll have to be on your best behavior or you'll be cancelled totally. No money, no bank account, no ability to travel, nothing. Well, what's the difference between that and Stalinist Russia or Nazi Germany?
Yeah, that's Larry Ellison. I'm reliably informed.
That's the guy. He gave Blair 237 million, I think, to push through this ID card thing.
We're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
The first thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. You have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform, so we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
Like, when can we cancel you? Yeah, I see Max Headroom's not aged very well, has he?
He does look a bit like Max.
Well, I just don't understand why. I mean, it's such a weird psychopathic. What do most people do that needs monitoring? They go and see grandma. They go to the shops and buy the weekly shop. They buy some eggs and some milk and some bread and some cornflakes.
Yeah.
And then they go to the cinema.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that.
No.
And if they're hanging out and they're talking about political, like we are having subversive conversation, you don't need to know about that either. It's none of your business as a government.
Well, I mean, there's laws in place now. If you're doing that in the pub and one of the pub's employees hears what you're talking about and is offended or upset, the pub can be in trouble and you can be in trouble. Well,
yeah, there's been cases, hasn't there? Yeah, it's very much like Jurassic Park, where they say just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because the technology is available doesn't mean they should implement it and do this to us.
And if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. Well, there's that classic quote by the German pastor Martin Niemöller. First they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't do anything because I wasn't a trade unionist. And it goes down, and then eventually it says, then they came for me, and there was nobody to speak for me. Yeah. And that's exactly, this is stepwise what's happening.
Yeah. So we've established that this climate crisis, and I'll do that as well, this climate crisis narrative, which is coming to dominate the UK political thinking, is based in this green narrative. So what's your take on the renewables being apparently 9 times cheaper than gas-fired electricity generation? It's a claim. What do you make of that?
Well, we've been trying to point out that it isn't for a really long time. I don't think I really sort of understood renewables as anything other than sort of a way of sort of easing us into just dearth, basically, and scarcity and hardship. I know, you know, and that's very obvious because the Climate Change Act asserts targets, but it doesn't, you know, that are legally enforceable, but it doesn't say how those targets would be achieved. You might as well have a law that says people should be able to fly by flapping their arms up and down, because you can't, like, there is still physics.
Yes,
there is still the material constraints of the world, and they should have that, like in any normal world or any normal political order, you would say, well, it's a cart and horse thing, isn't it? You've got to have the technology before, and you've got to have the economics, in fact. Yeah. But actually, if we go back again, you can see in the 1970s, environmentalism was committed to degrowth. You can see it in the Paul Ehrlich, who's you know, celebrated by the British establishment, saying giving society cheap and abundant energy is the moral equivalent of giving an idiot child a machine gun. Because, and I mean, he was factually wrong, because what he said was, and there's a little bit of it. It's an interesting diversion. He said that if we had cheap and abundant energy, and cheaper and more abundant energy, then every attempt would be made to pave over the entire countryside. But that's not what happens. No. And that's not what's happened with industrial agriculture. As we've got better at producing food, we've used less land. We're now, the global agricultural footprint has been diminishing because of industrialized agriculture. So he's wrong factually, and it's in a catastrophic way. But none of the establishment has ever said, you know, we need to revisit this stuff. We need to look at our foundational principles. So degrowth and sort of making us use less and less was always part of the agenda, and the technology was an afterthought. The other thing I'd say about the renewables is we've heard it constantly since the Climate Change Act. We've heard it since the before even the Climate Change Act. That investing, which means spending. I'm doing that again. I need to will create jobs. I just imagine me constantly doing that. It will create green growth. It will create economic growth. It will create jobs and all of the rest of it. Notice that all of these promises are not legally enforceable, but the targets are. Yes. And so we have no recourse, and a cross-party consensus that this must be achieved no matter what, essentially forced the entire country to sign a blank check.
It's an economic death wish.
It is,
It's an economic death wish.
Because as you were saying earlier, Ben, you've got these developing countries who are basically being told, you've got to go along with this narrative. And they're thinking, well, hang on, we're just getting to the point where we can develop. We're not going to listen to you. We're going to carry on building our coal-fired power stations. We're going to carry on doing things the way we want to do it. And we haven't got any right to stop them from doing that. That's their choice.
There's a guy called Jesper Machuga in Africa who does expos and things like that, saying exactly that. You don't have the right to say that to us. And he's dead right. Yeah. We should mind our own business and let them manage their economies as efficiently as they possibly can. Yeah. The most important thing to build a credible economy, as you've already said, Ben, is to have cheap, available, reliable energy at, low cost and always dispatchable, which wind and solar aren't. I mean, all you need. We've seen all this stuff with Dunkelflauser in northern Germany, you know, and we're all so interconnected now that if the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining, and they're still trying to balance the grid to get renewable stuff in, you can see the whole lot collapse like it did in Iberia, and basically the whole electricity supply chain falls out, and then you get a day and a half of blackouts, and 11 or 12 people died because there were people who needed to be connected to, you know, medical devices and stuff like that, and it's just madness.
I think on the green view, they think that's the optimal relationship that we can have with the natural world. I think that, like, you know, if you really push them on this, they go, oh, that's regrettable.
Yeah.
A few people have died. That's terrible. But
cracking a few eggs.
Yeah. And you know, they think. I mean, I'm looking out the window. I've been looking out the window today, and there's no wind. And then it's been like this for quite a few days now. And I wonder what do they think people are going to do?
Yeah, there's not a lot of sun either today. Certainly not where I am. It's quite cloudy. So without the sun and the wind, it's a ridiculous concept.
Miliband keeps saying, "Oh, we must build more and more solar and more wind power." But in fact, we've already got too much wind power when it's working efficiently to feed into the grid.
Yeah,
and so we're paying wind turbine manufacturers and the operators to actually turn capacity off.
Yeah.
We pay them when they generate, and then we pay them when they don't generate. Well, why don't we do the same with gas stations then? Because they don't get that get out of jail free card. You heads I win, tails you lose.
Well, there's a lot more of this in the pipeline. A hell of a lot more. I mean, Clean Power 2030, I think they need about 200 gigawatts of installed renewable capacity.
Yeah, to get 60.
There is on the NESO, the National Energy System Operator, on the pipeline, there is nearly 800 gigawatts of capacity being considered. I mean, given that peak demand in the UK is only 60 gigawatts, this should be alarm bells should be ringing everywhere. How is it that there is nearly 800 gigawatts of capacity in the pipeline, more than 10 times more than we need?
Yeah.
But and of course, you do need 10 times more installed capacity for solar, because the load factor of solar, it's only 10% in.
Yeah, and wind's about 30 or something.
Yeah. But nonetheless, that means you've got at lunchtime in July on a weekend, you've got this immense amount of power that you've got to deal with,
and can't store it.
You can't store it, and it's well, a lot of that 800 is actually storage, but it's just absolutely vast amounts of money that's sort of waiting to get rent on the backs of ordinary people's households. So I think I think it's going to create a situation where you are going to need Tony Blair's and Larry Ellison's dystopian visions to manage society. And I pointed this out when Extinction Rebellion turned up, and they were demanding net zero by 2025, which is now. And I said there is no precedent in history for such a destruction of wealth, and transfer of wealth that hasn't involved tanks and troops pointing their weapons at civilians on streets. Because it's just a complete transformation without any democratic mandate whatsoever.
And of course, this is what digital ID is trying to achieve without actually using main force. It's trying to achieve exactly the same thing. Because basically, people would be controlled because they won't have access to their own resources.
And then what happens when the digital ID data center
gets hacked,
or loses power because there's no wind?
Yeah.
And then what do you? How are you going to monitor the protesters then? I mean, it's so my point about 2025 is that you're going to have civil conflict at some point between now and whenever your net zero target is achieved, because net zero target is wholly irrational. I think they were convinced that they could salami slice the process, and they could do it bit by bit by bit. We get an extra gigawatt, an extra gigawatt, an extra gigawatt.
It's like the American thing: by the inch it's cinch, by the yard it's hard. You know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But that's not how it works. There are finite quantities involved, and everyone has a bottom line. Yeah. And once that's crossed, once you go into the red, once you can't afford something, you can't afford anything, and then you're bankrupt, and then your house is gone, your job's gone, all of your stuff is gone. Yeah. And it's not like
you've got nothing to lose to actually, react against the system in a forceful way.
Yeah.
Let's put up that graphic. I mean, because so many people, I don't know that this document that was produced by Cambridge and Oxford University academics, which makes me feel extremely ashamed having been to one of them. But basically, they have a plan for net zero, and this is working in the background. It's a graph showing you what they want to achieve by 2050. Can you put that up, Charlotte? It's the big chart with all the coloured bands.
Is this the fires study?
Fires, UK fires, yeah.
They Oxford and Cambridge, right?
Yeah. £5 million of public money was used to fund this, and it is dystopian and totalitarian.
Resources they use to produce this absolute rubbish is extraordinary. I mean, what could we do with 5 million? We could. If anyone's got £5 million, I'll give you an agenda, and we'll end this.
We'll spend it for you, and it'll do a lot more good than that.
Yeah. We will end this nonsense very, very quickly with £5 million.
Yeah. Have you found it yet, Charlotte?
Just going through all the folders, all the manila files.
I can't remember what I called it. I think I called it UK Fires or something. Just a minute.
And they're so. I mean, they have these dreams in these academic research units of imposing this kind of stuff on us.
Absolutely.
There's like, we're going to get rid of travel, and everyone's going to be a vegan, and then we'll all sit around a camp. No, not campfire. We'll all sit around an LED bulb and sing "Kumbaya," and everyone will be happy because that's what we really like doing. We really like, and everyone else, all that everyone else needs to do is just realize how much.
That's it. There we go.
Right. No cars.
It's sort of a rose-tinted view of sort of a feudal existence. I mean, if we look at this. A 40% reduction in road use by 2050. Well, road use has typically been going up at 1-2% per annum for the last 50 years at least, steadily, even jumps and starts. But people want to move about. They want to, as you say, visit relations, go shopping, drive to the airport so they can fly out on their holiday annually. And that's the next one to get killed. Flying, there will be no commercial airports open in the UK by 2050. No commercial flying. So forget your annual holiday. That's out the window. What was the next thing? Shipping. And they've already started this. The EU has already proposed putting a tax on carbon dioxide emissions from shipping. Well, this country is a net importer of almost everything, and even more so now thanks to Miliband's crazy deindustrialization policies. If we can't get anything in, how are we going to eat? How are we going to clothe ourselves? How are we going to survive? And no commercial shipping. So forget your cruise. If you like cruising, that's out the window. And forget being able to actually buy anything because nothing could come into the country.
I mean, one that sticks out for me is for beef and lamb to be phased out.
Yeah.
And you phase out cows and sheep and people eating cows and sheep
and cockroach pate.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And I mean, over my dead body. I mean, Sunday lunch is once you reach a certain age, one of the few pleasures that remain. It's almost glib, isn't it? It's like this. I want to see them defend it. I
Yeah.
want to.
The bottom
Yeah.
one, it's the most ridiculous one. Fossil fuels completely phased out. Well, they don't seem to understand there's about 6,000 products that we rely on that are derived from fossil fuels. And we'd have no medical appliances left because they're all made from plastics that are derived from oil. We'd have no antibiotics, no ethical drugs, aspirin, all that sort of stuff. No paracetamol. You think
no computers?
How are we going to survive? We would be back to a feudal existence. We'd be climate serfs.
Yeah.
And
for what?
I think serfdom. I mean, lots of people have pointed out the serfdom. There's Joel Kotkin, who I think is more from a social democratic kind of angle, and his book, the coming neo-feudalism. Very sensible book, and he's certainly not like climate skeptics like we are. He's probably more mainstream than that. But it's the same stuff that Vivek Ramaswamy has written in Woke Inc. I think the second half of that book gets a bit boring, but they're pointing out there's this kind of emerging order in which we are sort of increasingly dispossessed serfs in this, and you that's when you just hear Tony Blair talking to his chums in front of all those sheikhs with their get up, and you just go, of course that's what you lot want.
Well, exactly.
But when you hire idiots at really expensive universities to produce absolute crap like this matrix of our immiseration here, if you think that you're going to go into that and without causing civil conflict, you're bonkers. You're just dangerously bonkers. It's not like, I mean, the thing that sticks out for me is the Sunday lunches, because I happen to like Sunday lunches. But this involves millions of people in Britain, never mind elsewhere, being totally having a totally hostile relationship with their government. It's bad enough for them now, and then they're plunging to around 15% in the opinion polls, and they're clearly not going to last the course.
No.
And they're certainly not going to be re-elected. But if they try to sustain this, if they try to say, well, democracy isn't compatible with saving the planet, then there's and we're gonna say what you can eat, when you can eat, how you can move, about how. I mean, just
what you can buy.
What you can buy. I mean, it doesn't. It's Stalin. It doesn't. I mean, yes. It's not a regime that's as violent as Stalinism yet. Yeah. But how do you think you're going to sustain this level of immiseration? And it's people will remember now, and they will remember the 2000s when they did have lifestyles that were worth living in the 2010s, and then they were very angry about what's happened, and they are creating the situations for civil war. If they think, I mean, I don't want to be dramatic about it. I think that much of the political class has realised that it's gone too fast, and I think that's even the words that one of them has used.
Johnson.
I think it's Boris Johnson has used. But you've still got a lot of the infrastructure that thinks that all you have to do to stop to prevent those excesses turning into civil conflict is just some nudging and some PR and the right kind of messaging, and everything can carry on rolling unless people really understand what's been taken away and what the agenda is. And the establishment tries to rein it in. There's a danger that the ideas will take on their own power, and governments and what have you will lose control of that agenda. I mean, we're already on the cusp of, I think, radical environmentalists turning into terrorists.
Yes.
So it's that far, and with the backing of the United Nations, I might add. The United Nations last week was one of the rapporteurs was whinging about the fact that Britain punishes people who break the law in protests, talking about Extinction Rebellion, and saying they shouldn't be persecuted in this way, right? You know, so they like there's a it's like an anomie, a total decline in professional standards in amongst elites that will sort of put anything before the political agenda. The agenda is absolute. So there's a real danger. So I don't want to sound too dramatic. We're we're living in a sort of Stalinist dystopia now. No, I want to stop it getting that bad.
Yes,
right? And that's what I think we really face a danger that the establishment ideologies will cause this deterioration.
I was going to say, I think the starting point is probably to look at what's going on in the education system, where we've gone from a democratic style of education to an autocratic style, where people, like you said before, Brian, people should be taught how to learn, not what to learn. We've just basically this has been set up to happen 15, 20 years ago. With the decline in education standards, or rather the implementation of something that has got a very sort of dark narrative, and that's why we're where we're at now. My children's generation, you challenge the way things are, and there's a real sort of, you can't say that. Why? Because I think I can make my own decisions. And that's what the younger generation are struggling to do. They cannot make their own decision. They will follow the narrative. And to quote yourself, Brian, we're all doomed.
Okay, so let's go back to the sort of plan that we're having. So a sort of partly jokey question, Ben, is Ed Miliband certifiably insane, just badly advised, or worse?
What kind of creature is Ed Miliband?
Yeah.
What is an Ed Miliband? Imagine trying to explain Ed Miliband to an alien. I mean, where would you start? He's so far removed. I think from ordinary life. I think maybe that's why he doesn't get challenged, because he's so bizarre that he people just go, what are you? Who are you?
People don't take him seriously.
Well, maybe the alien would turn up and say, "What's Ned Miliband?" Only joking. He's one of us. You know, like he's been dropped here from another dimension.
Some sort of American TV comedy character there,
or Mr. Bean.
Ish. But also Lee Anderson put him on the spot about carbon dioxide emissions, and Miliband said, "Oh, we're only responsible for 1% of global carbon dioxide emissions." No, we're responsible for 1% of man-made global carbon dioxide emissions, and that's 0.035% of total emissions, because over 95% of the emissions are natural and we can't control them. So the guy's got no grasp of the science. How can you explain?
Well, he thinks that if Britain commits climate harikiri, or whatever it's called, what's the thing, then all of the other countries, Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, whatever his name is now, Vlad Putin, Xi Jinping, they're all going to go, "Oh, look what Ed Miliband's done to Britain. Let's do the same now." And then Ed Miliband will be the world leader of this thing. I think he's kind of grown up into. Well, obviously he's sort of Mark. You know, his dad's a famous, rich, wealthy Marxist, and he's a Red Prince. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And if there's a really interesting, you know, if you can bear it, watch his interviews with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart on the rest of his politics, and he talks about. He goes through. Like, oh well, first he tried. You know, he finished Oxford. He tried making television programs. Didn't really like. Tried law. Didn't really like. Did academia. Didn't really like. You know, it's just this quite pampered. You know, slightly just a bit useless, dysfunctional. Doesn't really know what he wants to do. And then he gets sort of offered. I think he was working on TV programs. In some sort of junior researcher capacity, and then I think he goes to, is it Harriet Harman or someone? Anyway, I can't remember who he goes. He goes into a Labour MP's office, and then Gordon Brown poaches him. I imagine they knew each other because he's a Red Prince, isn't he?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he gets pulled into the Treasury, and then he says, even as he was being offered the safe seat of Doncaster North, he still didn't know whether he wanted to have a job in politics. And then within 10 years, he's leader of the Labour Party. After that being this aimless early 30 something.
Yeah.
He gets this safe it's just handed to him on a plate, and I think he's probably most Labour politicians have come up, well, a lot of Labour politicians came up through the trades union. They had an industrial background.
Yeah.
They may have gone to Ruskin College, sort of the working class, the sort of socialist equivalent of Oxford University. It's in Oxford. And they may have done very done well for themselves and worked on their political reputations in that way.
Yeah,
Pressed the flesh, walked the streets, impressed the local constituencies. But this was a very different thing. This is a professional politician.
Yeah.
So again, I'm still doing this, and he's just appointed to be the representative of Doncaster North. Which famously may be contested next election by Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah.
So whereas there would be a relationship between a constituency and, if I may put it so strongly, an economic class and a political party. Now there is just this professional twit who has no connection to the constituency, no connection to the class, no understanding of the. I mean, just go to Primrose Hill where this guy dwelt, and he's just. It's like a virtual reality thing. It's like a movie. Yeah. It's a very glamorous part of London. Nobody there is. If anyone wants anything there, it's because they're from another part of London where everyone's poor. There's Yeah. He is alien to most people's experience of life, and he has these ambitions, probably sort of more resonant with what Tony, this sort of idea or set of ideas that Tony Blair was sort of harking on about. This is what politics is going to do, not this discussion between the public and government. The consent of the governed is no longer required.
Exactly. Well, it's like this Ayn Rand, who was at the time, she was talking about left and right and how there wasn't any difference, but she said the view of statists is that the citizen is the rightless slave of the state, and that's what they seem to be aiming for.
They'll say that they're just trying to make the world a better place for us or whatever, but it's like kind of, you make it, it's functionally equivalent to having a nice cage.
Yes.
It's not one in which anyone gets to define what their own lives are themselves. And so when Lee Anderson says puts this very simple question to Ed Miliband, it's not actually what I would put to Ed Miliband. I'd put all sorts of other stuff to him to challenge him on, but it doesn't matter. It could be the most complete debunking of everything. It could be bulletproof, cast iron, solidly unimpeachable fact, but it doesn't come from within Miliband's milieu, so he doesn't recognize it even as something that he needs to debate. Debate and democracy has just been wiped off the map. And I think there's a sort of analog in science and democracy whereby both the different processes, but they attempt to find something resembling truth or an accommodation between conflicting ideas about what is. I'm certainly not saying that democracy always finds the right answer or truth in the way that science attempts to find the objective truth.
Or used to.
But But it's nonetheless, it's an attempt to find what is at least legitimate for the purposes of managing society, the things that need to be managed. So once you've got rid of all of that dynamic, this debates and discussion between competing perspectives, then that's whatever system is remaining is is on course to degenerate. It's gonna become further and further apart from reality, political reality, economic reality, physical reality. And Ed Miliband is that.
He's the embodiment of that.
He's the embodiment. He's not the cause. He's a symptom. He's an epitome of it. Yeah.
I think it comes down to the fact that governments are supposedly voted in to govern for the public rather than govern the public, and that's where we're at the moment. We're being told what to do rather than being represented.
They're supposed to be our servants, but they're trying to be our masters.
Exactly. Anyway, we're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello, I'm Basil Valentine, and this is Unprecedented TV, unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented, the home of free speech here on the internet. Do please like and subscribe over at YouTube. Follow us on X, and remember, I'm on air every day, Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. for Ascending Order, your daily news edit, with live guests and all the genuinely most important stories from around the world. Don't allow yourself to be propagandized by the corporate media. Forget the world at one on Radio 4. Join me, Basil Valentine, instead, 1 p.m. on X, Monday to Friday, also on YouTube. And I'll see you all very soon.
Thank you, Basil. So, go on, bro.
Well, you go first. Sorry.
Okay. So the next question I was going to ask is, with the United Nations and the EU proposing CO2 emission taxes on commercial shipping, hiking the price of all imported goods against an already dire economic backdrop, is this part of stepwise absolute zero plan implementation?
Well, we've looked at the chart, so
Yeah.
Is it like a stealth, like we were saying, by the inches, a cinch, by the yard it's hard, just nibble. Do you think you get that feeling?
Yeah, the UN is clearly seeking more power and responsibility for itself. It's a bureaucratic metastasis, isn't it? There's no bureaucracy that won't try and inflate itself like a tick on a host. Just eat until it pops. And unfortunately, that's for the world's expense, and it's a very odd organization. There's a lot of pomp around it. Really weird. People sort of waft around, so these beatifically unimpeachably ethical, but there's some horrific stuff that the UN has been involved with, not least of which is the forced sterilization agenda in the past, or the beginning of the green agenda. Thousands and thousands of people throughout Asia and Africa just being sliced up, and many dying and left with awful problems. And it didn't really get any better. What it's really good at is PR. For some reason, people think the UN is somehow distinct from governments, and it was from its foundation. You go, you read the people. I find people don't understand this when they say, "Oh, this is Agenda 2030," and I say, "Cool it on Agenda 2030. Look at the UN." Don't worry about things like, look at its foundational documents. What does it want to do? It wants to dissolve the nation state. It was talking without without any sort of shame or what have you. It was talking about world government. Now, it might have been doing that in the shadow of the Second World War and the nuclear bombs. And it was that notion, literally world government. It was being advanced by people like Albert Einstein. So it had a great deal.
Strong was one of the.
Well, he came up with the green. Morris Strong was involved with the green the environmental program, but the idea of a global government was definitely the kind of post-war dream, and because Einstein's belief at that time and shared by a number of others, was that nuclear weapons were so powerful and so dangerous that they negated the possibility of the nation state existing within a stable world order, right? So you had to bring nation states under the control, under the auspices of a higher court, if you like. And that's been, but that principle, that ethic, as great as that might sound, as sci-fi as that might sound, is very easily corrupted.
Yes. I think we've got a clip of this from George Bush
As
Senior
grave
talking
as
about
it
this in
is,
the 80s.
also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge, a new era. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Right, yeah. He's talking at the end of the Cold War, isn't he? He's talking about the collapse of the and look. I mean, like, there was an opportunity for peace, for unprecedented levels of peace, but guess who blew it? Bush family. Very quickly as well. But very interesting seeing the UN. In the UN, in fact, I don't know if wasn't the UN Environment Report. I think it was the UN's Human Development program. Anyway, they have an annual report on the progress. All the statistics that agency has gathered and what the outlook is for humanity. And at the end of the Cold War, there's this one report, and it's going, wow, brilliant. The opportunities for peace and for cooperation, for peoples to be themselves and what have you, so on and so forth, is now unleashed in a way that's never been possible before. Within 1 year, the tone of the next report is, oh my God, we're doomed. We're doomed. As soon as the possibility of mushroom clouds had faded away, climate change filled the void, because all of these institutions, the entire apparatus, the architecture of global politics, depended on something as terrible as the Second World War happening again, or the ensuing.
That would be a threat to menace people.
Yeah, they could. It wasn't enough for them that we might have world peace.
No,
and they had to set about undermining industries and technologies and prosperity in order to sustain their position.
And this is where I came into this, because when I first set up the Alliance of British Drivers, and we went to see the Department for Transport, and we were talking about accidents and speed and stuff, and I collated all their own factors and said, well, speed's at the bottom of the pile. The more important ones are around observation and hazard perception, hazard response. And this functionary said to me, but of all the factors that are acting in accident precipitation, none are as easy to treat as speed. So it's a bit like the Vietnam body bag thing. We can't actually admit that we're losing the war, so we'll make something important that we can control, because we don't know how to control the other things.
Right.
And that was when I started to feel you're approaching this completely the wrong way, and it's just mushroom from there. That they set an agenda, they have a certain set of principles, and it doesn't matter about the conflicting evidence, because they're so focused on going down one route that they're just completely blinkered, and it's just got progressively worse.
And then it's all infused with anti-car ideology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate symbol of personal freedom, and that's why they detest it.
Well, and the speed thing is that the speed is what would you say, proportional to convenience, isn't it? It's like the more the faster you can get from A to B. I mean, I think people are obviously often very reckless when they exceed speed limit. But
yeah, and the thing is that where there is really reckless speed, very high speed, it's invariably it's accompanied by drugs, alcohol, or escaping in or from in a crime scene or from a crime scene. Those are the ones with the illegal speed. All the other ones are down to people not looking properly and not being trained to look properly, because if you don't observe properly, then your chance of perceiving a hazard and avoiding a hazard is gone. You know, I mean, a guy we're going to interview later this month, a guy called Mark McArthur Christie, who was one of a long-time friend. He used to ask two questions. He used to say, if somebody obscured your speedometer, do you think you can drive safely? Question one. Question two, if somebody obscured your windscreen, do you think you can drive safely? Pretty self-evident, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that we've diverted a bit from there. So I suppose, circling back to what we've been talking about, absolute zero and whatnot, there's two linked questions, I suppose. You know, they want to control how far people travel, 40% reduction by 2050, and they also want to stop them flying or using commercial shipping for cruising and stuff like that. What chance have they of achieving that without actually having total control of people via stuff like digital ID?
What chance have they got to sort of reduce our standards of living and our expectations without
if they don't have
our quality of life,
monetary assets?
Well, I think they've got no chance. I mean, I think the writing's on the wall with the polling. I mean, I think Reform are on their way into the second half of the 30s of the percentages, and now even I think Labour have just slipped behind the Tories. It depends on what polls you read, and I mean, I really want to urge people not to be complacent. They need to carry on supporting projects like this one, if I may say so, my project, and independent media, and they really need to. The Tories are talking a good game about the U-turn on climate policy, but I think they're underestimating what they need to do and what needs to be done to really meaningfully turn this around. And there's a danger that the Green Blob will get its nasty, dirty claws back into that party, which has probably passed itself by day anyway. And there's a danger that they will split the vote and so on and so forth. But the writing is, there is an end to it if things are allowed to progress naturally, and I think maybe there's a broader shift in political movement. People, I think it would be a shame if we didn't learn anything from our experiment with environmentalism beyond the climate. I think it would be a shame if we sort of expected a reconfiguration of the institutions that have taken us to this point, rather than a more dramatic or more significant reflection. Do we need all these quangos? Do we need all these experts telling us how we live our lives?
No.
Do we need to be? Let's not be passive consumers of politics and policy making, right? That which is kind of this sort of level of apathy, which kind of, or certainly disenfranchisement or exclusion from politics, which kind of taken us to where we are. If we just rearrange things, there's a danger that things will just go back to the way they are. I also don't want to be the burn it all to the ground guy.
No.
I don't, as much as I'd like to see. I think the one thing that I want to topple over. Well, two things. The BBC for very valid reasons. The Guardian is just my vindictiveness. I'd like to see it just fall out. No one reads it anyway, and it's dying. Its influence, it's got a lot of money, but it's sort of. I just think it would be a nice symbolic kind of Wicker Man. The Guardian just folded completely.
I think your comment about a bonfire of the quangos is very important, because the problem is that so much of effectively what should be executive power wielded by government has been palmed off to these organisations which are not controlled by anybody. They're totally autonomous. and they just do their own thing according to the whims or the ideology of the people running them. And we need to get rid of them. And the other thing is, and this is Cameron's fault, he embedded behavioral psychologists in all government departments. And these are the people responsible for all this nudge crap. P45 for the lot of them, out.
Yeah.
They don't belong in the political process. They don't belong in government, and they need to be taken out and, given a P45.
They need to be made to they need to be put into the labour market and find their own level of competence, not allowed to rise to their own level of incompetence.
That's I think part of the problem is a lot of politicians and civil servants are actually promoted well beyond their limit of incompetence.
Well, they're career politicians, aren't they? They don't know anything outside of the system. I find it kind of ironic as well that they want to stop us from flying. Yet there's all these proposals for runways.
I'm building more air capacity. It's paradoxical, really.
And don't start me on HS2. I could have saved them billions just by setting their alarm half an hour earlier and going on an earlier train. That would have got you to London the time you want to get there.
They wanted people to get to London from Birmingham to London really quickly, or Glasgow, or Edinburgh, or Manchester, or Liverpool. They should have built more regional airports.
Yeah,
they should have bought more airplanes. That would be a really good way to get from. But you get to Birmingham to London in 20 minutes or something. It'd be wonderful if we could have transport of that nature. Yeah, but to suggest such a thing would be like.
Well, we had regular flights from where I live, which is on Teesside area, from my local airport, which is about 3 miles away from me, down to London, down to City Airports, I think it was. But I think they knocked that on the head because the landing slots were so expensive in London that they couldn't afford to keep the flights going.
Well, the only good, there were two good ideas that Boris Johnson had, and he suggested the floating airport in the Thames Estuary as an alternative to Heathrow, which should have been actually in addition to Heathrow. So no, we need more airports. If you don't like building roads, then build airports, because then everyone can commute in this way. But and the other one was the underground circular road, and I lived near one of the exits. It used to take to get home out of West London. It would take me sometimes 2 hours either to drive across through King's Cross, the A40, or sometimes even 4 hours trying to get out onto the M25 and anti-clockwise. And so it's like, this would be a fantastic development. But unfortunately he drank the green Kool-Aid and
made by his wife.
Yeah, made by his wife, probably, with all the drugs in it. Shame it didn't finish him off. But these are what should have been. These are the things that should have been discussed for the last 20, or my whole adult lifetime. Because this climate BS turned up the year I left. Well, I think it was the Rio conference. I think was the year or the year before I left school.
Yeah,
right.
And everything since then has just been. And I came out of school, and it was the loads of people were going on these anti-roads protests. That was the anti-roads movement, and that's where when the Swampies, the earlier they were breaking bread with the Shire Tories.
Yeah,
and we don't need roads. No more roads. No more roads. Not in our. And that's when the Tories started having nothing to say about industrial development and
the birth of the NIMBY.
Yeah. I defend NIMBYs. Today's NIMBYs I would defend. But then it was a very particular kind of that they were against certain things that we probably needed. And it was a curiously conservative, too weird. No one would think of Swampy as a conservative. It's probably a small C, but he's a deeply regressive creature. Yes. He wants to go back to the 1400s or even earlier or something like that.
Well, we're getting there. Yeah. Right. Well, Ben, it's been absolutely brilliant.
I think it's been excellent. I've really enjoyed it, and we will. Please, you must come back, and we will review maybe 6 months, 12 months down the line, and see whether we've regressed further or we've managed to pull ourselves back from the brink.
We can all have a cockroach skewer together, can't we?
Oh, yeah.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers.